All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone. My name is Michael Molina. I'm the SPTC Workforce Development Coordinator. I'm happy to introduce everyone to our speaker today. Before we do that, I'd like to do a few housekeeping rules. The webinar is going to last about an hour and 15 minutes from 2:30 Central Time to 3:45. There's going to be a Q&A session afterwards, after the presentation. Also, you will be given one professional development hour if you stick for the whole presentation, if you need that. We'll also be emailing a survey after this event to let us know how we did, if you have suggestions for future topics, etc. So just a general, rate the presentation, let us know of future ideas you'd like to see going forward. Make sure and keep yourself muted for the duration of this presentation out of respect for our speaker. At the end, you'll have an opportunity to either type a question in the chat or unmute, raise your hand, and you can ask a question in person to our speaker. So, about our speaker today, we have Lucero Duran, Trinidad. She's the Chief Flight Instructor at the School of Aviation and Transportation Technology's Professional Flight Program at Purdue University. There, she oversees flight training operations and helps shape the next generation of aviation professionals. Her work is centered on aviation safety and flight education, with a focus on developing well-rounded aviators who demonstrate not only technical skill, but strong decision-making and professionalism. She's also dedicated to supporting and mentoring instructional staff as they begin their careers, guiding them as they develop as educators while completing their own academic pursuits. Ms. Duran Trinidad earned her BS in Aviation Technology, Professional Flight, and MS in Aviation and Aerospace Management, Aviation Human Factors, both from Purdue University. I do see a couple hands up real quick before we turn this over. Is that related to any technical difficulties? Yeah, go ahead and type in the chat, or you can unmute and let me know if you have any issues. All right, I'm going to wait for that chat, but while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our speaker. Go ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, everybody, for inviting me to talk to you today. Before I get started, I just want to say again, thank you. I love it when I get to talk about aviation and share my passion with other individuals and other peers around the country and, even in my little small place of Lafayette. Um, but also, every time I talk about aviation, I'm hopeful that maybe I can ignite a spark in somebody, especially in this audience, to maybe pursue something in aviation. So again, I truly appreciate it. So just give me a moment while I share my screen here. And all right. So today, I'm going to have a conversation about aviation and the aviation industry. More importantly, about kind of my story a little bit, because I do like to talk about aviation through storytelling. And the best way to do that is to kind of share my story. So that you can get a better idea of what aviation is, what are the opportunities that are out there. And kind of once we get through that part, go into the more technical sections of our conversation. So to start us off, right, just the agenda of today, introduction and background. Then we're going to go into the general aviation, what it is, what are the opportunities from a pilot perspective, because I am a pilot, and then kind of go into what the unmanned aircraft systems, drones opportunities are out there. So just a brief introduction about myself, right? My name is Lucero, as Michael indicated. I am the Chief Flight Instructor at Purdue University School of Aviation and Transportation Technology. So I am Mexican. I was born in Mexico and I lived there till I was about 9 years old. At that time, in July of 2001, my family immigrated to the United States, and we ended up in Lafayette, Indiana. Why Lafayette of all places? Not really sure, but that's where we ended up. And so one of the main reasons that my family came over to the US, similar to many other immigrants, is to get a better opportunity and get a better life, right? So, and that was one of the goals that my parents had for my sister and I, was they wanted us to have a better opportunity at life, and that meant an education. Um, so because of that, our parents were always very supportive when it came to an education and making sure that we met those milestones that we needed to meet. So for that reason, 2 months after we moved into the US, I got enrolled into elementary school into the grade I was supposed to be in. But of course, I didn't know any English. I was 9 years old, different new culture. So it was tough. There were its ups and downs, of course, during that time, but we made it through. One of the main things that has pushed me forward every instance of my life that I met an obstacle, even then, is the fact that one, I'm the oldest sister, so I had that mentality of I gotta have an example for my sister, but also the just I'm the oldest sister. If I can do it, so can my sister, right? And then just seeing my parents, all the work and sacrifices that they did, just gave that ingrained sense of I am not gonna give up and I'm push forward. So I made it through and eventually got through my college degrees. Um, Now, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is how did I go into aviation? What was the thing that led me there? Because no one in our families, either from my dad's side or my mom's side, were in aviation. So how in the world did I end up there? And unfortunately, I don't have a cool story like other pilots or other individuals, but it honestly was one day I was in our backyard just chilling, kind of just hanging out, and I see a little plane kind of flying by. Lafayette, just a quick geographical explanation. So Lafayette is the city that's right next to the Purdue University campus. And so in the house that we were living at that time, I think it was just fate. We were under the pattern of the aircraft that were flight training at Purdue. So I saw a little airplane go by and I thought that would be cool. That'd be exciting. And one of the things that I knew going into college was that whatever it is that I was going to do, I wanted it to be exciting. And I wanted it to be able to help others. Um, and that I would be proud of. So some of the things started taking off when I thought about being in aviation. It'd be cool because who doesn't think flying an airplane is not cool? But also that it would be exciting and that I think I would be able to help others. So after thinking about it, I talked to my parents and I told them, hey, I think I want to go into aviation. I want to be a pilot. Um, and they supported me. They're like, okay, if that's what you want to do. So we kind of just went for it. I applied to the Purdue University. I applied to the aviation program. Now, at that time, we didn't know that the Purdue University's aviation program is prestige. We didn't know that it's competitive. We just kind of applied. And also not really knowing kind of how college applications and all that process worked in the United States, I only applied to Purdue University. Um, so I put all my eggs in one basket and was like, okay, here we go. And I got accepted. So that was really great. I think we were very happy and it's like, okay, we're definitely going to do this. So then in that summer between the end of my senior high school year and before college started, right, the university had a orientation and so we came to it. And that's when we finally realized what it takes to pursue a degree in aviation, right? The financial costs, the potential career opportunities, but also the personal costs, because it did require a lot of effort, dedication, and discipline, right? So it wasn't until that orientation that we realized, oh, shoot, what did I just get myself into? But I was set on pursuing that career. So we pushed forward. My parents supported me both financially and emotionally and everything. And so I was able to get through my bachelor's degree in the professional flight program here at Purdue. And I am so glad that I stuck to it because I just love aviation so much that even now and even then as well, I just can't see myself in anything else. Um, just not being able to come to an airport and work, not being able to get into an aircraft and fly, not being able to teach others. It's just strange that if something were to happen that I couldn't do that anymore, um, I think I'd be devastated to a certain degree, right? But I was so excited and I was so happy and I was like, okay, what am I doing next, right? Once I graduated from my bachelor's, I had to decide what to do. So that was when I had to determine what the career opportunities were in this degree, in this industry, sorry. And so, thankfully, at the time that I went through the program at Purdue University, they had a lot of opportunities for the students to kind of experience little snippets of what a future career could look like. So I was able to learn what it would mean to be an airline pilot, which after learning that, I realized that was not for me. I learned what it would be to be a corporate pilot, also learned that was not for me. So then, one of the things that was also another opportunity was what it's to be a flight instructor. So I got my certificate to be a flight instructor and started flight instructing for the university while I was still a junior and senior in the program. Um, and I realized that I liked it. I really enjoyed teaching others. I enjoyed sharing my knowledge and passion with other individuals that were also trying to pursue a career in aviation. And I decided that that was the career path that I wanted to follow. Um, it, it was exciting. It would help me help others. But most importantly, it would allow me to have a better work-life balance of being with my family. Because one of the things that I do value a lot is family. So after my graduation from my bachelor's degree, I started with the university as a full-time flight instructor. So this was in 2015. At the same time, I also started my master's degree also with the university. And so during the time from 2015 and 2021, I kind of worked myself in the organization to learn the skills, the knowledge that would eventually lead me to my current position. So during that time, I took on roles working with the Able Flight organization that we hosted at that time here in our university, being a flight instructor, but then also being a coordinator and leader for it. I also became an advisor for two different student organizations, which helped me also learn a lot of skills and knowledge of working with undergraduate students as a leader. And then also became a safety officer for a little bit of time, which learned a lot about the safety aspect of aviation. But all of those skills I am very thankful for during that time because then it led me to then being able to become a chief flight instructor in 2021. Um, and so now that I've been in the chief flight instructor position for 5 years, at least here in the university, I've come to learn a lot and I've come to appreciate everything that I've learned. I think one of the things that I definitely am proud of is the fact that I am happy with where I'm at. I'm happy with what I've accomplished up to this point. There are things, of course, that I wish I could have done differently, but that comes after experience and going through it. But for the most part, I am very happy and excited to be where I'm at because I see the potential of what I can do as I help the students and instructors that are in our program be where they need to be. And all of this happiness and that I feel in my job comes from my passion. And that's one of the things that I do want to bring up a little bit when it comes to the aviation industry is that almost everybody that you talk to who's in the aviation industry has a passion for it. And I can say that I don't think I've seen that from other industries as much. I mean, there are industries out there where people are very passionate, but I don't I haven't experienced one where the passion for it is just always there. And I think that's very important to recognize because without that passion of the individuals in our industry, we wouldn't be able to be the industry that we are now, right? We are an industry that always strives to be um, the best that they can be, but also the safest that it can be. I think a lot of individuals can think back to the saying that they've heard that flying is the safest way to travel. And it is for a reason. It's because of the people that are in this industry that have the passion and the knowledge to do what needs to be done, whether it's supporting the safety cultures and the safety standards that need to be there, being able to support and mentor others, whether they're peers or incoming individuals coming into the industry. But most importantly, is helping, at least in my role, I'm able to help build the skills, the thinking, the habits, the discipline in the students and instructing staff that I oversee and manage so that they can take all of they learn and share it with others to help support those principles that our industry um, is um, is surrounding itself with. Um, So now that I've kind of shared a little bit about my story and kind of how I got here, we can, we're going to make a small transition into the more technical aspect of this conversation. But as we talk through that, I want you to kind of think back of what I talked about and how I got into this industry because it is how others also can get into this industry and how it can affect others. Um, so the topic that I'm going to focus on today, like I mentioned, I am a pilot, I am an educator. So my perspective comes from that background. I am going to touch briefly on the different careers and opportunities that exist outside of a pilot viewpoint, but most of it is going to be related to piloting. Um, so, the world of aviation, it's really big. There is a lot of opportunities out there. I think one of the big things that when people think of the word aviation, they think of airlines, airports, baggage handlers, TSA, kind of the thing that most general public is exposed to. But they don't think of all the other things that are associated. Similar to what this picture on the screen shows, there are other opportunities related to business aviation, to operating and working in a hangar, like a maintenance technician, a test engineer, an operations engineer, or working in aviation management or airline management, which can work into also working for a corporate operation or a fixed base operator. Also could lead into aerospace design and manufacturing. So more engineering side of things. It also could mean a career in the military. There are multiple options in the military for aviation related aspects. There's of course the now growing unmanned aerial systems, or otherwise known as remote or drone operations, as well. So it is so vast and so large that it is hard sometimes to explain in a short amount of time all the different opportunities. But how does this all fit within my topic of general aviation? So let's talk about what GA or general operation is. So according to the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, otherwise known as AOPA, it is the most diverse flying activities in the United States. And I can say that it is because general aviation is basically any flying that occurs outside of an airline or scheduled transport operation. So any of the airlines, FedEx, UPS, or any of those that are scheduled wouldn't fall under general aviation. That would be considered more commercial aviation. Also, general aviation operates out of the thousands of local airports that are around the country, both in the continental US, but also in Hawaii, Alaska, and then Puerto Rico. It does provide more services um, to the general public that are more localized, that could be critical. And it's also the place where a lot of the training for our commercial operations, of course, where the pilots or the aviation management individuals or the aeronautical engineering individuals go to get trained before they move on into those commercial aviation careers. It is estimated that more than 90% of all the registered aircraft in the United States operate under general aviation activities, and that more than 80% of all certificated pilots um, operate under general aviation activities. And so general aviation is, I think, one of those areas where that is not well known to the general public, um, because it's it just operates. There's no advertising really. There's no like ads or anything like that that would be tell people like, hey, we have an airport here, we are renting aircraft, we are providing flight instruction. Well, maybe flight instruction, there is more advertising, but for the most part, there's not as much advertising or knowledge of it as you would from a airline or other more large commercial operation. And so because of that, I do believe that a lot of the training and a lot of the initiatives that are brought up in the industry come from the commercial aviation side and eventually make it to the general aviation population, which has its up and down. But for the most part, it is important to know that when you're looking at potential problems in your area and when you're trying to find solutions, it's good to think that there is general aviation out there that could provide a solution that you may not be aware of. So to kind of understand what are the different things that general aviation does, I'm going to go over some of the careers that are available in this area. One of those is what we call bush flying. So bush flying is where we have pilots that are flying into remote or not easily accessible areas. So this could be mountainous terrains or terrains with a lot of forest area, not a lot of open space. This could be into areas that have a lot of water or lakes or other areas that you wouldn't find a conventional airport or a conventional runway in there. Um, Basically, what these pilots do is they will land in whatever flat land or water that they can find. And it doesn't have to be that big or that large. It is a very specific type of flying that can provide um, taking people from and to these remote locations, taking supplies, which could be anything from food to medicine um, to any other type of supplies. And it could just, of course, also be just for fun. But it is a subgroup of aviation that provides this service to these locations that you wouldn't normally be able to get to. Some of these locations could also be done accessible through helicopter flying. But of course, you know, with the differences between a fixed wing, which is the aircraft that you would normally that you see on these pictures here versus a helicopter, um, you know, and the different aerodynamics and all the things that come into flying those aircraft, sometimes it's not beneficial to fly a helicopter, and we need this fixed wing airplane, which would then be able to do that. The aircraft itself are designed to handle this tough terrain, and the pilots that do this are it's a very tight community because they have to know what they're doing to be able to do the type of flying that they do and get into these very tight and very different terrain locations. It is amazing what they do in this area. Another aspect of aviation that is out there is what we call aerial survey. So aerial survey is basically it encompasses all different things that could include pipeline patrols. So if an organization, a company is trying to track, you know, how the pipelines are being laid on the surface, they would get an aircraft or a helicopter or a drone. We're starting to see that a little bit more to follow those pipelines and kind of either take pictures, survey them, just kind of map them, whatever needs to be done. It also could just be land mapping of a specific area or a terrain to inform either state or federal agencies or an organization or some other type of group. Geophysical surveys are also done through aerial survey, um, animal population monitoring, and other things like that. Again, like I mentioned, this type of aerial survey gathers information either by taking photographs, by helping map certain things that they're, observing on the surface, to help make more informed decisions either from government agencies, government organizations, nonprofits, um, or cultural organizations or preservation organizations, anything like that, that they needed information. One of the things that we've experienced, at least here at Purdue, we did have a contract with an organization where one of our aircraft would survey for them, and we were monitoring the population of deer in our state. And so with that information, that organization was able to determine, are they breeding too much or not enough, or where are their areas where they're locating for their living and breeding situations, which then help inform them for when hunting season comes, right? Of, we're only going to allow so many permits. We are going to prevent people from going here or going there to help manage the population of deer in our state. So that is one example of what aerial survey can do. Now, I mentioned a little bit ago that one of the things we are seeing is drones being taken over kind of the aerial survey, um, which it is a little easier and more efficient to do that, but there are still its challenges, which I'll talk more a little bit later in this conversation. But that is an area where we're seeing that come through. Another area in general aviation that is out there is crop dusting. I think most people know what crop dusting is, but it's dusting of agricultural fields with either pesticides or anything else that is needing to help those vegetation grow the way they should be. Again, this is also a very tight-knit community of pilots that do this because of the specialized flying that they're having to do. I think most people can think of what crop dusting is from the movie Airplanes that came out a few years ago, the animated movie, but that's what crop dusting is. Another area of NGA is aerial firefighting. So these are the aircraft or helicopters that help combat fires. That's basically what what they are. They usually are located in areas of high risk of fires, and they are trained specifically for that situation. An individual that wanted to go into this career would have to have references and be able to work through the process to get into this area, again, because of not only is it one of the more dangerous aspects out there, but it's also the toll that comes with having to do the job. But that is another option, another career in general aviation that we have. There's also nonprofit or humanitarian positions out there. Two examples. The one that I have here on the screen is called Angel Flight. So Angel Flight is an organization that brings together pilots and aircraft owners to help transport individuals that are in need, usually in medical need. So if there is somebody that is living, let's say, in Kentucky, and they needed to get to a hospital in some other state or some other city, because that's where the doctor is to get this surgery or get this medical assistance, and they needed to get there quickly. Angel Flight helps coordinate. Hey, I have this pilot in this aircraft that lives by you. They're willing to fly you in your aircraft and take you where you need to be. No cost. It's just, you go in there. So it avoids the commercial airline aspect of booking a flight, going through TSA security. It just gets you there sooner. I'm pretty sure they also do other needs outside of just medical. It's just what I'm familiar with is more medical situations. Another organization that is more well known, I think, in the country is the Civil Air Patrol. The Civil Air Patrol also is an organization that brings pilots and aircraft owners together, helps with training, helps with just keeping everyone in position proficient so they can keep the airspace safe. But also when needed, they help with search and rescue, and they can help in disaster situations, to help transfer people, help transfer supplies, or again, search and rescue or anything else that might be needed in an emergency situation. There's, of course, flight instruction. I think that is one of the biggest areas in general aviation that is associated in this field. Most pilots at one time or another were providing flight instruction at one in their life, in their career. And then, of course, lastly, the last thing here is personal flying. That's individuals that either rent or own their own aircraft and they just fly for fun. It is either a hobby, not necessarily a career, or maybe it's part of their business, whether it is they transport things here and there for their own personal business or anything like that. But these are just some of the pilot careers that are associated in our field of aviation that's outside of the commercial or schedule aspects. Now, there are probably some careers that I have left out because it's just so vast. Um, one that I just realized I didn't include in here is tour banning, or banner towing, sorry, banner towing, which is a job out there that some pilots do. And some big cities have banners, some don't. Sometimes they're in sporting events. You might see a little aircraft, trailing with a banner. That's also another career in the general aviation. But the reason for showing you these opportunities is to make you aware of what is out there, right? Because when we are informed, we are able to um, be able to think of solutions that may not have been there if we hadn't been aware of them, right? So as we look into what are the needs and the assistance that we can provide a community or a group of people or just a city or a town, one of the things that we want to make sure we're able to is that aviation is out there and could potentially provide a solution that we were unaware of. Um, but moving forward from that, let's talk about what the UA is, because I know that is one of the topics of this webinar, right? Is what is it with UAA? So I think one of the things that we need to talk about first is the difference between the terms UAV and UAS. So most people, I think the general public understands what a drone is. The technical term that is used in aviation is UAV, which is unmanned aerial vehicle. That is the drone aircraft itself. That's all it is. UAS, which stands for Unmanned Aerial Systems, is the complete system that encompasses the implementation, the aircraft itself, the flying of it, the certification, and the regulation of UAVs or drones, right? And it's very, very important to know that when it comes to the agencies that are trying to work in making UAVs more common and integrating into our airspace, they use the term UAS because it incorporates the whole thing. That is why if you were to do a quick Google search and look up how are drones being incorporated and you somehow end yourself up in the Federal Aviation um, Administration's website or FAA's website, you'll probably see the term UAS a lot. And they use it because they want to make sure that they are incorporating all the things that come into it. And that is one of the challenges that we are experiencing now in the aviation industry is how do we combine these drones or UAVs into the airspace as it is now, right? Because right now we have manned aircraft, right? We have the pilots with the aircraft flying around. They're following all the different federal regulations that we have to follow. We're following all the rules regarding airspace, um, flying in different types of terrain, flying in different types of restricted or specified airspace. We're having to learn about the maintenance of aircraft so that we can troubleshoot the decision making, the communicating with air traffic controllers, all of these things that pilots have to do when they fly these manned aircraft. We have to figure out how will these drones be incorporated into it, right? And right now, they are being incorporated in a limited status, right? Right now, there are regulations that limit how UAVs can be used. Those limitations include that a drone or UAV cannot be flown higher than 400 feet above the ground unless they've gotten approval or some type of exception or some type of clearance. And of course, that it's outside of military use because military is completely different and outside of my purview. But they have that altitude limitation. They also must maintain that drone within line of sight. So what that means is that the operator, so the individual that's operating the drone, has to always have their drone within their sight. And it cannot go outside of their sight. So that also limits the distance that drone could go, or if it could go like behind a tree or behind a building type of situation. Also, the individual has to be certificated. And it depends on what type of flying they're doing, whether they need to go as far as getting a remote pilot certificate or just a completion certificate of a training that is available for free in the FAO website. So it also depends on what type of activity they're doing. And then, of course, they're expected to stay away from airports and other restricted airspace that is out there. And usually the restricted airspace is any airspace where manned aircraft are operating. So that already limits a lot of what drone operators can do, which is limiting the possibilities of what could come, what they can do. However, because the FAA does understand that drones are one of those items that is growing and there's a lot of opportunity, they are working to find a way to incorporate it. But that comes with determining what happens if we increase the altitude of them, right? Where they're no longer limited to being only up to 400 feet above the ground. Does that mean that the drone has to have a system within itself that helps it stay away from manned aircraft? Or does it need to have equipment on the drone where the manned aircraft avionics systems that are in those aircraft can notice the drone, right, and be able to then avoid it, right? What does that look like? Where does that responsibility lie? And does that mean that a regulation needs to come out so that an operator who wants to operate a drone, how are they going to ensure that they do have that equipment? Does that mean the drone has to get registered just like manned aircraft? Does it mean that it needs insurance? Like, what are those things, right? If we're trying to get it out of line of sight, how do you do that? Does the operator need to have like a screen where the drone has a camera so they can see where they're going? Is it based off of GPS signal? Is it based off a predetermined code that got submitted on the drone, and so the drone goes on that predetermined path? What does that look like? What are the regulations associated with that? Does that mean that the operator needs more training on the National Airspace System and the regulations of manned aircraft? Does that mean that now there needs to be a way to provide that training, to track that training, to what is the accountability aspects of it, right? Does that mean that now there needs to be an FAA inspectors that all they focus on is on UAS type of operations? Does that mean that operators have to talk to air traffic controllers? Or is there a system where the drones talk to air traffic controllers in some way or another, right? But also, what does that mean with the current community of, does that mean that a pilot, so or air traffic controllers or airport managers. Now they need to be trained on all these new rules that are coming up. Do they need to be trained on what are the different ways to look out for these drones, or what are the approvals that they need to be doing, or those type of things, right? So all of those are challenges that we are seeing now that are trying to get worked through. There are definitely a lot of organizations out there that are helping, right? AOPA being one of them, EAA also being another organization that are trying to help the general public work with the FAA to help answer some of these questions that are coming up when it comes to drones. Um, Also, um, the companies that are trying to use these drones, whether it is to, to make videos, to, I don't know, survey an area or anything like that. If there's companies wanting to use drones that are not in the military, um, they're also trying to work with the FAA to help process this along. I definitely see it taking a few more years before we have a fully integrated system. It is definitely going to be in stages, because anything that the FAA does, it does it in stages because of our safety aspect that we want to maintain, right? We don't want to implement something and then things start to happen, whether it's accidents or incidents. So it'll definitely be a few more years before we see a full integration of them. And also, I definitely see where some of the pilot jobs that I mentioned earlier could be taken away from pilots um, by these drones, like aerial survey. If a drone can do it, that's great. I mean, I am happy for that, because if it's more efficient, if it's safer, and it gets the things done faster and better for the betterment of a community, then the better. Because that's what all aviation is all about, is helping others and being at the service of others. Um, and let's see. And then lastly, what am I seeing now with drones? So right now, with even with these limitations, some of the things that I have seen being done with drones is I've seen some airports use it when it comes to wildlife management. So every airport has to make sure that there's not too much wildlife in their airport that could affect an aircraft when they're taking off, landing, or being around. So I've seen them use drones to help manage that. I've definitely seen companies use them when they need to take videos, when they need to, take a scope of maybe like a university or a city. I know there was talk about potential delivery service. I don't know if that's a thing anymore, but there's just so much potential that it's slowly working there. So that is really all that I had for today's presentation about just kind of a quick overview of what the aviation industry is, a bit about how drones are being incorporated into the system. So I do want to thank everybody for coming over to and hearing me talk about all of this. But if you do have any questions that we don't answer in the Q&A section that we'll have here, my email's on the screen. You're more than welcome to reach out to me. If there is a question on anything that is not related to pilots, maybe you have a question about aviation management or the aeronautical engineering technology aspect, you can always email me and I can get you in contact with the appropriate individual that can help answer all your questions. But thank you.
Fantastic presentation. A big virtual round of applause for Lucero. Amazing work here. A lot of great information, especially for prospective students in this area. Please go ahead and type your questions either in the chat or the Q&A session. I have a question. We already have a couple questions posted in the chat. We'll take them by order. First is, how many hours of training is needed for UAV UAS certification, and could someone with UAV certification fly a UAS or vice versa? And I think that goes back to the terminology preference you mentioned earlier.
Yes. So if you are trying to use a drone or UAV for some type of commercial aspect, whether it's part of your business or you're trying to make money out of it, you have to be certificated. And all that is, you don't need flight hours, all you have to do is you have to take a written exam. The written exam covers basically the different subject areas that a pilot would learn just to a different level of knowledge. And then you would take that written exam and you would get a certificate saying that you've taken the exam and you've learned the topics you needed to safely operate your drone. Oh, and also in that written exam also covers the regulations that you would be operating under. So as long as you did that, you'd be good. If all you're doing is for a hobby, you still have to comply with the regulations, of course. But in that case, you would just take an online training course and get a completion certificate of that course. And then you would just have to carry that with you anytime you operate. So that way, in case, an FAA inspector ever showed up where you were, you would be like, here's my completion certificate of that I have taken this course. Or same thing with the actual certification aspect of it. So hopefully that answered your question.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Two more questions. One is, what are some regulations in place for personal flying?
Oh, for like a pilot, I'm assuming it's like for a pilot. So the regulations are the same. Whether you're flying from personal, whether you're flying under a job. The the FAA has this book. Oh, there we go. It's called the FARA. It's about this thick. It's, what is that? Like 3 of my fingers width. That includes all regulations, well, not all of them, but the majority of regulations that we have to follow as a pilot. And so the regulations are in here deal with how close you can fly to the ground, how high you can go, how fast you can go, the different type of airspaces that exist out there. And the airspaces are based on whether you're over an airport or a type of airport, whether you're on top of a city or like a field or mountainous terrain type of situations. They also govern what proficiency and what training you need before you get in an aircraft, the type of certifications that you need to fly certain types, also what you would need to fly during day versus night versus like good sunny days versus like cloudy, what we call IMC days, which is instrument meteorological conditions, versus all these other things. So all those regulations regulate everything that we do when we're coming to flying. And when you're flying personally as a hobby or renting, you still have to comply with all of those. It also depends on the certificate that you have as a pilot.
Okay, great. Another question, what are some challenges you've seen in the workforce development? What are the challenges you've seen in workforce development in aviation based on your experience?
Yeah. So from my experience, I think the biggest challenge when it comes to workforce development is really just trying to determine what is the topic or subject area that we want to get better at, because there's just so much information out there that we as persons in the industry can have access to, that it's okay, what am I trying to develop more? Am I trying to develop a specific skill? Am I trying to develop a flying aspect? Am I trying to develop a operation, or am I trying to improve a process flow or a regulation? And then based on that, determining, okay, what is the best method and information that we need to make those developments in the people or organizations that we need. And I think that is one of the challenges that we have, that I've experienced at least.
All right, excellent. How does one find out about the locations and times of written exams for certification, and generally, how much does it cost?
Yeah, so it's all on the FAA website, and here I can pull it up here in a little bit and show you on my screen. But when you go to the website, you click on the link, and then it'll send you to all the information that you need to do. They are specified locations that conduct the exam, so you'd have to find the one that's closest to you. And usually an exam costs about 100, it's somewhere between 150 and $175. If you, there is a minimum passing score on these written exams. So if you don't pass the first time, you can retake it, but then you have to pay the whole amount again. So every time you take the test, you would have to pay the fee. But once you have it, you have it. I am not familiar if you have to renew that certificate every so often or if it's just more of a proficiency aspect, but I can definitely look that up if you're interested in and get back to you if somehow I can get your contact information.
All right. And then last question, are there different levels of certification for flying UAVs or UAS in tribal lands?
Oh, that is a great question, and I don't know that answer. I am going to assume that there is no difference at this time, just because it's so new. And by I mean it's so new, it's only been about I think 2 to 3 years since the new regulations about drones came out, and that's new in the industry. I don't think that there are going to be any differences unless the tribal land is somehow a restricted airspace or some type of protected airspace, then maybe there might be some different regulations or at least exceptions and approvals that you would need to get to operate a drone in those spaces.
All right. Looks like we have one more question typing. While we're waiting for that, I had a question of my own. Of those
Yeah.
careers you listed, which ones do you think are more popular? Like, are there some that are more popular than others right now?
Yes, I would say, let's see, banner towing is definitely one that's more popular that I forgot to put on my screen. Flight instruction for sure. And then aerial survey. I would say are the most popular only because those are the ones that help build time. So a lot of the pilots that are in the industry want to become airline pilots or some type of corporate pilot. And so in order for them to reach that goal, they have to have certain amount of flight time. And so those careers, flight instruction, aerial survey, banner towing, are careers that someone can do to help build that flight time that they would need.
All right. Thank you. Oh, another question. I know that you are also finishing up your PhD in learning design. What are some strategies from your doctoral training that you employ in your instruction?
Oh, that's a great question. Some I would say I do a lot of the strategies. So unfortunately, I don't do a lot of instruction anymore. I'm more in the management position now. But when it comes to our flight instructing staff, I think definitely one of the aspects that I bring from my PhD studies is the analysis of the learner, right? Is understanding what our instructing staff needs, what are they lacking, finding that gap and determining what is the best way to pass along the information or the training or the reminders or whatever it is that we would need to ensure that they do what we want them to do and that they're doing it well at the quality that we want them to do. So I think that is one of the things that I bring most from my studies.
All right, excellent. And if anyone else has any follow-up questions, is it okay for them to email you afterwards?
Yes, yes, for sure.
All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you so much. I'd like to give another big round of applause for our speaker. This was really interesting. I look forward to disseminating this. We did record this presentation. We're going to be sending out, especially to all of our students and everyone that we posted on our website. So look forward to that as well as a survey. So again, thank you so much. It was a pleasure hearing the presentation. This was really well done, and we look forward to posting it on our website for future dissemination. So thank you again. I hope everyone has a good rest of their day, and special thanks to our speaker. Well done. Great work.
Well, thank you. And just for that one person that asked about the remote certification, I put a link in the chat.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, take care. See everyone next time.